Assalamualaikum dear students, my name is Ikra Kurutran. I am your co-teacher for the subject Applied Linguistics from University of Education, Lahore, TG Khan campus, Department of English. Our today topic is process syllabuses. As in our previous lecture, we discussed about syllabus. What is syllabus? Uh, Wilkins pointed out that syllabuses are specification of the content of language teaching which have been submitted to some degree of structuring or ordering with the aim of making teaching and learning a more effective process. So our today topic is about the process syllabus. Now we will discuss move further and start our today's lecture. Second task based approach to syllabus design is also called process syllabus. This approach was derived from and influenced by mainstream educational research and curriculum design proposals for other subject areas. The process syllabus proposed by Brain as the second main example of process paradigm, which has roots in various influential educational theories, for example, the humanist approach to teaching and learning, which followed educational and philosophical rationals and which were intended to other subject areas. Though coinciding significantly with views of applied linguistics such as Widdowson and Brumfitt on the open-endedness and creativity of the language. Thus, Clark details four important and substantially overlapping streams of applied linguistics and educational thinking, all of which place the learner at the center of the learning process, drive at least partly from a holistic approach and focus on the learner's affective, cognitive, and linguistic needs, his or her conscious or subconscious strategies, and his or her own perceptions of the objectives, aims, and other aspects of learning situations. There are four situations are discussed. The first one is the largely North American experimentation with humanistic methodology in ESL. Second one is the British EFL emphasis upon needs analysis as the basis of a notional or communicative syllabus, often with specific purposes in the mind. Third one is the general increase in research into issues related to learners' individualization and anatomy. And for last one is the closely related investigation into the nature of learner strategy in the language learning process. So process syllabus is defined broadly by Brain as a context within which any syllabus of subject matter is made workable. This appears to imply the process that can be all things of all people. But examination of the term context as used here shows significant differences between this and other type of syllabus in the areas of language teaching methodologies, learner contribution, and planning for teaching and learning. So, as we earlier talked about the early rationale for process symbols for educational and philosophical, not merely psycholinguistic, with curriculum design proposal for other subject area, constituting an important influence. Type A syllabuses were rejected for their interventionist authoritarian nature, as described by Campbell. Targets for language learning are all too frequently set up externally to learners with little reference of the value of such targets in general educational development of the learner. Now here we discuss the process syllabus focused issues basically. In focusing on three processes, that is communicating, learning, and the purposeful social activities of teaching and learning in a classroom. The process syllabus reflect recent attention in applied linguistic theory towards a number of issues, and these focused issues are described as follows. First one is processes of language learning. So the main focused issue in process syllable is the processes that are all the processes that are involved in language learning and teaching. Second one is strategies and techniques. The other focused issues in process level is strategies and techniques, which that are used by language learners for the process of language learning. Third one is the effects on interaction and learning. The effects in process labels, effects on interaction and learning is also focused, which result from varying from forms of classroom organization and activities. Fourth one is feasibility of ongoing syllabus content. Another focused issues in process syllabus is the feasibility of ongoing syllabus content that negotiations between teachers and the learners basically. And the last main focused issues that is discussed in process syllabus is learners reinterpretations and accommodations of new knowledge and capabilities. These learners interpretation and accommodations towards new knowledge and capabilities through the sharing of ideas in group work. Next, we discuss the main points that are described by Bren and Cantlin about process syllabus. So the main points are as follows. The first main point or main characteristics of process syllabus is a social and problem solving orientation with explicit appropriation for the expression of individual learning style and preferences is favored over a view of teaching as the transmission of selected and pre-digested knowledge. This outlook is reflected in Cantlin's definition of task, as he defined task as one of a set of differentiated sequenceable problem-posing activities involving learners and teacher in some joint selection from a range of varied cognitive and communicative procedures applied to existing and new knowledge in the collective exploration and pursuance of foreseen and emergent goals within a social milieu. Another main important point of process label is that it is an infrastructure rather than a learning plan. With this labels, designer no longer pre-selecting learning content. Um, Another main point or main characteristics of problem solving is that it provides a framework for teacher and learners to create their own ongoing syllabus in a classroom. thus allowing for changing abilities, learning needs, and perceptions in learners without specifying particular content, methodology, lectures, structures, or grammar. The teaching learning process therefore provides significant lesson content, and it is unnecessary and unrealistic to plan content without consulting the participants, especially in the view of everyday phenomena of teacher and learner reinterpretation of every pre-planned syllabus. Instead, Candlin suggests retrospective syllabus that can only be described after the course is over. With process syllabus designers in journal aiming to provide a framework for learning, which is defined as deliberately engaged reinterpretations and which explicitly addresses teachers' and learners' capacities to select subdivided and sequence subject matter for language learning which they perceive as most valuable to them. It is this joint creation and implementation of a syllabus which the process labels tries to serve. Brain and Cantillon's focus was and is the learner and learning processes and preferences, not the language or language learning processes. So the main concern is with learner and learning process. They are emphasis that any syllabus, preset or not, is constantly subject to negotiation and reinterpretation by teachers and learners in the classroom. Camlin suggests that what a syllabus consists of can be discerned after a course is over by observing not what was planned but what took place. Another main point is that both Bren and Candlin claim that the learning should be and can only be the product of negotiation. Unlike that of traditional syllabus designers, as we discussed earlier, that Bren and Candlin's focus was not on language or even language learning processes and preferences. They argue that owing to different characteristics of individual learners and teachers and classroom dynamics, all syllabuses, preset or not, will undergo a process of reinterpretation and negotiation by the learners and teachers when they are implemented in classroom. In fact, Candlin argues that it is not possible to determine what a syllabus consists of until the course is finished. Only that can what actually happened be discerned from what has planned. As Canglin defined the main discussion by the words as a process syllabus addresses the overall question: who does what, with whom, on what subject matter, with what resources, when, how, and for what learning purpose. Even Warren also advocates a replacement of the traditional conceptions of the syllabus as a list of atoms making up a repertoire of communication by one which promotes a learner's capacity for communication. He advocates incorporating a content syllabus within a process syllabus as an external check on what students are supposed to know, but he's clear that procedural knowledge is to replace declarative knowledge as the primary element in syllabus content, and process is to replace product. By the wording, he said that conventional syllabus design has oriented toward language as primary subject matter. An alternative orientation would be towards the subject matter of learning a language. This alternative provides a change of focus from content for learning towards the process of learning in the classroom situation. Next, main points about the process syllabus is that in that description of process syllabus, Brain argues that rather than specifying a list of items which are to become available for communication, a syllabus should aim to foster a student's capacity for communication. It should emphasize knowing how to participate in target language communication by focusing on the underlying skills and abilities needed to apply. Uh, needed to apply, reinterpret, or adopt a knowledge of rules and conventions during communication. The other point is knowing what and how are considered to be interdependent, but it is the ability to share meaning that refines a student's knowledge of the system through which meaning is conveyed basically. Brain does, however, make an allowance for the content syllabus to be incorporated into a process syllabus as a way of checking on what students are supposed to know. But it is clear that in his model, procedural knowledge and process are to be given priority over declarative knowledge and product. The process labels, according to Long and Krog, at its most fundamental, is a plan for incorporating a negotiation process and thereby learning process into syllabus design. So these are the main points or main characteristics about process syllabus. So next we discuss the level of brain model. Bain in 1984 proposes a hierarchical model with sets of options at four levels, final selections among e- which at each level is left for user to decide on. Course design consists of providing the resources and materials needed for. So let's move towards the levels. These levels are first level is decisions for classroom language and learning. That level is involved with making decisions for classroom about language learning. It is concerned with making general decisions about classroom language learning, who needs to learn what, how they prefer um, to learn it, when, with whom, and so on. So basically, that first level is involved with making decisions about how, when, where, mm, at which level, with whom that learning should be developed or should be designed. Second is alternative procedures. Alternative procedures for making those decisions that are described in first level, the basis for an eventual working contract between teachers and the learners. And the third is alternative activities. Alternative activities, for example, group work, teacher-fronted instructions to be selected on the appropriateness of the decisions at level. So alternative activities such as teacher-led instructions, group work, and laboratory use, etc. So these are alternative activities are selected according to the appropriateness of decision that are made at first level basically. The fourth level is alternative tasks. alternative tasks to be selected and undertaken within the activities that were decided or uses in level 3. For example, a bank of pedagogic tasks students may select from to realize the activities. Here first is at the level of task that the actual working process of classroom group is realized in terms of what is overtly done from moment to moment within a classroom. Finally, the model allows for ongoing evaluation of chosen activity tasks and procedures concerning the appropriateness and effectiveness in relation to initial decisions made. By defining these levels, Brain defines tasks as any structured language learning endeavor which has a particular objective, appropriate content, a specified learning working procedure, and a range of outcomes from those who undertake the task. Task is basically therefore assumed to refer to a range of work plans which have the overall purpose of facilitating language learning from the simple and brief exercise type to more complex and lengthy activities such as group problem solving and simulations and decision making. So these are the levels that are defined by Brain in his model of language learning. Process syllabus. Next we discuss the justifications that are given by Brain. The process syllabus addresses Brain's 8 syllabus design questions, not by separating syllabus and teaching methodology and establishing a divide between syllabus and classroom, but by content and acknowledging current views on language learning and classroom dynamics, and by enrolling the learners as an integral part of that lecture. Since targets for language learning are all too frequently set up extremely to learners with little reference to the value of such targets in the general educational development for the development of the learner. Division of language according to lexemes and grammars are not excluded, since learners can choose to concentrate upon them is wished, especially as the result of a particular learning experience. But they are now a result of social constructs produced independently in classroom by teachers and the learner, who perform the normal procedures of syllabus design, including evaluation, together in classroom in an ongoing and adaptive way, using a bank of classroom activities which are themselves made up of sets of tasks. Thus, Brent claims that the process syllabus addresses the comprehensive language learning questions of who does what, with whom, on what subject matter, with what resources, when, how, and for what learning purposes. And he proposes 6 justifications for use of process syllabus in language learning. So he gives the justification for using process syllabus in language learning, and these 6 justifications are as follows. The first justification that is given by Baron about process syllabus used during language learning is, according to him, there are at least 3 syllabus types present in each classroom: that of the teacher, the learners, and the practical one, which they work out each day. and the process syllabus facilitates synthesis of the three by all the participants in the classroom. So due to these three syllabuses that are used in each classroom, the process syllabus is necessary because it facilitates a synthesis of the three by all the participants in the classroom. The second justification that is given by Baron about process syllabus is that the process syllabus provides a means of relating content, method and matter and methodology. The other justification is that it requires reinterpretation of itself during the learning process, and it is therefore flexible, allowing for emerging changes in needs. So the process syllabus also requires reinterpretation of itself during the learning process. In this way, it is therefore flexible and allowing for emerging changes in the according to the needs. So it is best for to use process syllabus for learning a language. Fourth one is classroom decision making is of utmost priority. And the next justification that is given by Bren is decision making is seen as the authentic communicative activity in itself. So, as we discussed earlier, that the first level of process level is decision making about the language learning activities that should be involved in the process of learning. So, due to that decision making, it become an authentic communicative activity in itself. And last justification is being an extension of TBS. Justification for the latter also apply to the process syllabus. Thus, there is an arm of developing underlying communicative competence and assumptions and meta communication and shared decisions making are necessary for language learning adopting from Baron. So these are the justifications that are given by Baron for process syllabus. Now we discuss the criticism about the process syllabus. Criticism of the process syllabus claim that it lacks a formal field evaluation, assumes an unrealistically high level of competence in both teachers and the learners, and implies a redefinition of role relationships and is a redistribution of power and authority in the classroom. That would be too radical or culturally unacceptable in some societies. The need it creates for a wide range of materials and learning sources also need to be difficult to provide and to pose a threat to traditional reliance, however undesirable on a single textbook, which is the syllabus for most teachers, learners, and examiners. While underlying these are concerns about the logistical feasibility of implementing process syllabus in certain contexts, not flaws in the process syllabus itself. As such, they are not especially patent. After all, one would hardly fault radiography as a treatment for cancer because it is unusable without medical expertise, consenting patients, and electricity. Moreover, skepticism about people's desire and ability to take control of their own learning is to ignore the success and educational programs of all sorts where learners from different cultural backgrounds have done exactly that, often under the most adverse circumstances. More problematic in our view are some of the same weaknesses which we claimed were likely to the limit of effectiveness of the procedural syllabus, and which we think the inherent in process syllabus. So some are the same criticism that we discussed earlier in procedural syllabus. First criticism is like procedural syllabus deal in pedagogic tasks whose availability is not based on any prior needs identification, which raises problem for selection like procedural syllabuses. Brain and Candlin advocate making the range, criteria, and parameters of choice known to teachers and learners, but are keen to preserve flexibility to allow for learners and circumstances changes changing. We recognize that pre-specification of syllabus contents is preciously what Barron and Candlin seek to avoid, and accept that pre-specification in most syllabuses and are commercially published materials that embody then suffer from all the weaknesses they allege. We think, however, that arbitrary selection is due to the lack of needs of a needs identification, not to pre-specification. Moreover, while some learners and teachers might in practice recognize which task was relevant to their future needs, assuming such tasks happen to have been included in the task and choose to work on them. We believe course designers should be better judge of whether and have a responsibility to ensure that use of class time is as efficient and as relevant as possible, and that our task-based needs identification can help achieve this. Pre-selective pedagogic tasks on the basis of pre-identified target tasks need not mean that learners' choices in another areas are uh, curtailed, although it does not admittedly mean limiting the choice of tasks available. Nor need it restrict options provided at other levels in Barron's model. To use a medical analogy, we would like to have patients able to choose from among a range of alternative treatments, but expect the physician to limit their choice of remedies for what ails them. While we recognize that learners are one important source of knowledge about their needs, we believe that probably encoded conducted needs. The second criticism about process syllabus is about grading task difficulty and sequencing tasks, discussed by Candlin. And grading task difficulty and sequencing tasks are discussed by Candlin, where a variety of possible criteria are put forward without any regulation. This is a valid reflection of the state of the art, but a problem for the process syllabus, that and all the task-based syllabus are the same about the grading task difficulty. The third one is a focus on language form is not addressed. While not ruled out and presumably an option with task design for process syllabus to explicit provision is made for a focus on language form. For the reason indicated above in our criteria of procedural syllabus, what think in this is an error. Next criticism is that it is not clear to what theory or research in SLA the process label is to be held to accountable. It is not clear to what theory or research in SLA the process syllabus is to be held accountable. There is relatively little reference to the language learning literature in the writing on the process syllabuses. This may be a reaction to the tendency for SLA theories to ignore general education literature when making proposal for language education. However, given the strong evidence for at least some uniqueness for language knowledge and acquisition, and given the range of theories developed to account for it, is difficult fully to evaluate proposals which are not obviously and explicitly psycholinguistically motivated. The other criticism is that the process label has a lack of formal field of evaluation. We cannot find a formal evaluation process by the process syllabus. And the another criticism about process syllabus is that it is an assumed unrealistically high level of competence in the teacher and the learner. Another criticism against process syllabus is that an applied redefinition of role relationships and redistribution of power and authority in the classroom. So that would be too radical and culturally unacceptable in some societies. And the another criticism about process syllabus is about inadequate provisions of relating the syllabus to the context in which it will occur, for example, cultural barriers, etc. Next is emphasis on process and procedure rather than on outcome, possibly resulting in an aimless journey basically. Next one is the need for a wide range of material and learning resources, threatening the traditional reliance on a textbook, which often is the syllabus. Another is a lack of substantive evidence that negotiation produces better results, such that a more cautious approach might be more desirable. So these are the some criticisms that are involved or that are used that can be seen in process syllabuses. These are the references about the process syllabus. You can easily use these references for further details about that topic, and you can easily search them. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you will understand it. Stay home, stay safe and blessed. Thank you so much. Allah Hafiz.